Um, how much do you love your wife?
So much.
Yeah. When did she get to go to the vacation?
And this was all her idea. She was like, you need a vacation. You need some time away from the kids. Go. And it was amazing. She doesn't, the problem is when, I have to be careful because my girls are awake upstairs. But so when Shannon has gone away recently, it's to go up to New Jersey to help her mom and dad, which is not vacation.
No.
Right now. So it's in many ways worse. So, hey, are we live, Ben?
Yes, we are.
All right. So can I ask you guys, before Sarah gets here, a question about showers?
Oh,
I'll be Sarah for this because apparently we're live.
So Sarah was telling me that when she was in both high school and college, the gym had like one of these giant 40s style group showers. And in high school, a gym teacher would like stand there watching all the kids to make sure they showered after gym class. And she thought this was normal. And I think this sounds like something that happens in prison.
No.
I can tell you that in my high school, which was built in, I believe, 1964, there were showers that were strictly unused except by like one guy.
Yes, we had the same thing. Nobody ever used those showers.
Yeah.
Right.
Except that one guy.
In my middle school, there was a room for showers, which nobody used. In my high school, there were stalls, which nobody used. I do believe the boys' football team took group showers, and the wrestlers, but no women ever in my entire.
Can somebody start my video?
Oh yeah, I'll make you a co-host.
This is your subject.
I'm out. Have a good live stream, everybody. Bye.
Yeah, we only used the showers once in high school, and it was like to throw everybody in with their clothes after like a 2-a-day basketball thing, and we were just being like completely silly, and I think we got in trouble for turning them on.
See, this is a generational thing because there was some line because it was never an option for us to take the group showers at either junior high or high school. And yet I remember talking about this when I was a radio host, and below a certain age, everybody stopped taking the showers. And yeah. I don't know when that was.
Yeah. Like I never showered at school.
Certainly it was before Sarah was born though, right? What I'm trying to get at here is that I think Sarah's high school gym teacher was simply a perv.
It was elementary school. It was my rural central Pennsylvania elementary school.
You showered in elementary school?
Listen, I'm telling you guys, and this is like, I'm not making this up. It was mandatory.
Yeah.
And the nurse came in and watched to make sure that you did it. And
I would be beating down the door of that principal's office at that school.
No, this was the norm. This was the norm. This was the norm back in the day. No.
This is like that Friends episode where Joey is talking about how his tailor measures his inseam. It's like, and then he moves it over and he's like, like tailors do. And everyone's like, prison tailors, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just whatever. I'm just telling you, this was like a normal thing. And I like, and not only am I, this isn't one of those things I'm misremembering because this is seared on my psyche because I was, not to brag, but in 6th grade, I was in the talented and gifted program. And I remember I started skipping gym, which was my favorite class because like, I really like sports, but I started skipping gym in elementary school so that I didn't have to do the shower thing because I was too nervous.
Were you a gym?
There you
go. Did you go all out in gym?
Yeah, I mean, I was a nightmare, right? I like took gym super seriously. I like,
Yeah, but we just sprayed like country apple body spray on after. That's what we did.
God. There had to be some moment.
And Victoria's Secret Love Spell. Those were the two scents of my middle school.
There had to be some moment where everybody decided that they couldn't be naked in front of other kids because this was not an issue when I was there. It was just you may not have liked it, but it was the way thing was,
Yeah,
it was the way it was.
In my high school, if you broke a sweat during gym class, then there was something wrong with you. Like, anybody who was even like a third of the way to being cool could not put out more than like 5% effort during gym class because that just was not.
This is a millennial thing. This is the difference between boomers, because boomers, when we were done with gym class, I mean, if you had an afternoon class after gym class and people didn't shower, that room would be like radioactive. I mean, it would just be this fetid swamp. You
I
couldn't
don't know.
take it.
We have
No.
deodorant.
You can
You know?
dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball.
Okay, yeah. So Amanda, that might work with girls. Teenage
Yeah.
boys going through a certain phase of life.
Like I said, I know boys
Is it
wrestling
ripe?
team and football team showered, and they're like, it still smelled like mildew when you walk
Oh.
by, like ugh,
Mildew's
football
an
pads and
improvement.
singlets and mats with what's that, ringworm on them. Yeah, bleach that down.
Ooh.
Hey, Charlie, welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How
How'd it
was
go?
courtroom springing? Where did you go?
Yeah. Why are we not
Oh,
hearing
man.
about your wild time?
It wasn't wild. It was just like kids, stopped in Pennsylvania. And then we stopped in Maryland, visited my two new grandchildren, played with them, basically 24/7, and then drove back, 12-hour drives.
Yeah.
How cute are they?
They are extremely cute.
Super cute.
In fact, I just finished a FaceTime a few minutes ago.
Aw.
So, yeah. So you got to keep that going. So you people who have not yet been vaxxed, it's like it's liberating. Went to a restaurant for the first time in a year. It was awesome.
More. Tell me more.
You
is
walk in.
like when we're on the
and
boat, like stranded, and it's like, tell me about the last meal you ate so I can
Yeah.
pretend that I ate it.
They bring you food. They actually come to the table and you don't have to wear a mask or anything. It's nice. Yeah. You feel like a real person.
Sounds amazing. Well, down in North Kakalaki, nobody wears masks. And I'm assuming it's because they're all vaccinated. But I have to say, I was super DGIF. I was like, okay, hoaxsters.
Mm.
Well, you kept your 6 foot distance or more.
Fully vaccinated. I was like,
Oh, you have double
Yeah,
vax?
right.
Okay, I got one down, one to go.
Yeah. And I felt like wearing a t-shirt with a big V on it. Like, okay, you can do anything to me, anything.
I want a t-shirt that
But-
says "Go full Charlie Sykes."
Yeah. There were people, by the way, there were still people like wearing masks. Visited, by the way, the battlefield at Gettysburg, speaking of nerdy and geeky and everything, which
Oh,
I
That's
love.
kind of near me.
Absolutely fascinating. But there are people walking around wearing masks. Like, people, what? We're outside. This is really a big battlefield. You don't have to worry about that.
Worst things have happened here.
Much worse things have happened here. Yeah.
Before we get started here, can I ask, what did you guys, were any of you as upset by that Washington Post focus group where the people who said that they would absolutely not get vaccines, but they would 100% get fake vaccine cards so they could do all the things that people with vaccines? Is that not the most MAGA thing ever? Like, I'm a rugged individualist, but by God, you're not going to I can't take any consequences.
Yeah, well, that's pretty bad.
I don't think there's that many people doing that. I mean, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. I just can't imagine it's a real thing. Although, thank God for American ingenuity for the people who thought to fake the card and make some money. Good for you or something.
Well, nobody's
I
asked me for the card yet, so.
My card.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's part of it is like
My
nobody's
picture.
asking for the card.
Well, I could draw the card like on my computer and print it off for myself. Why would you pay money for it? It'd be the easiest thing in the world to fake.
I think we ought to propose having tattoos because that would just so own the who would be the national cons. I mean, that would just, if we could just have the Daily Wire people think that we were proposing that.
Mark of the Beast.
Well,
Chip,
yeah.
scan me.
Hmm.
Okay.
Guys, what are we talking about tonight?
Oh, you can see how much planning we put into this. Well, the title of the theme was
You should host tonight since this is you are the one who you come up with all the best topics for these shows.
okay.
I
Next time, if you want me to
nominate
host, I
Amanda.
need to know before the show starts. That would be great.
You actually came up with all the good topics, though. You did.
Okay.
Go.
So the thing that I really want to talk about has to do with the anti-woke corporate populism, if you want to call it that, that is emerging on the right. This has been something that has been bubbling up for years. conservatives talking about cancel culture, but I do think they really found their footing on this in response to the voting legislation in Georgia and everything that happened there. And I think it's very serious. I think it is a big deal. Because when I look at all the geniuses that got on the Trump train, they never found any policies to kind of match his positioning and bullying and all the punitive action that he wanted to take against his enemies. And this is it. This is actually it. Punishing, okay, they can't beat the Democrats. And so now they will go after corporations who express bad speech. And there's all kinds of legislation happening in various, things being talked about. Taking away the fuel exemptions for Delta Airlines, revoking MLB's antitrust exemption. But if you wanted to find somebody who is probably the smartest about doing this and who's actually thought about it really deeply, it is Senator Josh Hawley. He has a book coming out next month, The Tyranny of Big Tech. But his whole idea, he sort of idolizes Teddy Roosevelt, but not because of the rugged individualism or the Rough Rider stuff. It's because TR busted up monopolies. And in that, Hawley sees a blueprint to go after companies that don't embody his values, right? Like whatever those will be. And when you really look about the policies that he targets towards Facebook, Google, whatever, it's not with the intention of preserving any kind of policy. He really just wants to smash them, right? Because they're liberal companies that help Democrats push their agenda. He wants to, he said in certain interviews, he doesn't even know if Facebook should exist. And I have a lot of problems with Facebook and their algorithms, how they suck people into these rabbit holes. But Hawley views these companies that don't share his values as big corporate oligarchs who abuse the American workers and stand in the way of, anybody that wants the American dream, because he wants to revert back to this sort of idyllic childhood that he had. And I really don't think he sees beyond that. And so, it just has always bothered me. I think, Charlie, we've talked about this in the podcast, how he gets celebrated as this intellectual legal scholar. And really, when you look at his stuff, it just boils down to, I want to smash up things that I don't like. And that's really what Trump populism is all about. So there's my opening statement.
No, I think you're right. This enables them to have something that's actually populist and merges it with the culture war. But I guess going back to your point, there really is no there. I don't see any of this legislation going anywhere. The Republican Party is not ultimately going to be the anti-corporate party. Not a single member of Congress and other House is going to vote to raise the corporate tax at all. I think they're going to go through a lot of motions on all of this stuff, but it gives them a great talking point. It is just the sort of the lack of substance here. What I think is interesting is the opportunity it gives to the Democrats and the left, because here's the moment when they're moving on corporate America. And so we're not going to, like 5 minutes ago, remember when Republicans referred to corporate America as these are the job creators, these are the engine of our prosperity. They are people. We need to defend their free speech rights through Citizen United and everything. And now it's like, okay, so you're going to come in with the Bernie Sanders agenda, and Republicans are going to go, yeah, we hate them too. We're not going to vote for your legislation, but this is an interesting moment for corporate America, because who's their friend at all right now?
I have a very serious question on this. So if Josh Hawley wants to bust up Amazon because Jeff Bezos is a liberal, yeah, and the Washington Post is mean to Donald Trump, and Elizabeth Warren wants to bust up Amazon because Amazon is look, I love Amazon, but there are really excellent arguments that Amazon Web Services is subsidizing Amazon's attempts to kill the rest of the retail sector, right?
Yeah, ADR is huge.
Right. So, but those two sides can't hold hands legislatively because of the culture war. So what happens?
Yeah.
Right. If you have two sides marching towards the same ostensible goal, but they can't touch each other for reasons of politics and culture, then do they just stop talking about it, or do they keep talking about it but never actually advance any legislation?
Well, I mean, they both have different versions of legislation. I think they would like to see it fought in the courts. I think that is truly what Hawley is angling for, to try to regulate them out of existence and then have the Trump court decide for him. And if you look at, I was really interested in the interview that Charlie did about the Clarence Thomas, what was it? The concurrent opinion that he wrote. Right. Really mimicking a lot of the language that Hawley has been dancing around. And again, I'm really curious to see what he puts in his book on this about, what right people do have to platform. And this is a different discussion than Amazon, but not really, because you notice how excited people like Rubio and others were to talk about Amazon delisting that transgender book recently. That was a really big deal to them. And so they are kind of getting at this, who has a right to the platform idea, and I should have a right to your platform no matter what. Otherwise, you are not competitive and you have to go. Right.
Well, I mean, see, this is the problem, though, with, I'm sorry, Sarah, if you want to jump in on this, I guess maybe you're giving a little bit too much credit to Josh Hawley, because I think the guy is a complete fraud. I think that he's doing this to advance himself.
Oh, sure.
And that the chances of him actually accomplishing anything are absolutely nil. Now, they can do damage. Clarence Thomas comes up with this concurrence in this opinion, just sort of out of left field, right field, saying that we ought to treat the tech platforms like public utilities or public accommodations. What really strikes me about all of this is a 180 flip for conservatives who now want to use the power of government to punish companies, but also to control companies, to tell private companies what they can say, what they can do, requiring them to use speech. So I wonder how sustainable this is, because right now they want to beat up on these woke corporations, but it is a complete abandonment of anything remotely like free enterprise, small government conservatism that people used to pretend to believe until 5 minutes ago.
And this from the party whose only argument is socialism bad.
Yes, right. Yes. Right. Socialism bad. At the same time, they're basically saying, let's have big government come in and tell these companies, you must run this speech that we have decided that you have to do.
Yeah, because that is where the action is at. That is definitely happening. Yeah. That is definitely what the Tucker Carlson, Josh Hawley, name someone in the MAGA populist lane is angling for, because it was never about the principles to begin with. And so now they think, okay, I can have a policy framework for Trumpism. This is what it is. Give me what I want. I mean, I agree with you. I may be giving Hawley too much credit, but his arguments are going to be getting all of the attention in driving the policy framework on the right, I think, for the next year or so. I would put money on that.
So I think I don't quite know how to parse this conversation, because I think there's a bunch of different things going on here. Like, for example, I don't think that it's like anti-business, pro-business. It's sort of like saying the media, although even bigger, right? There's so many different types of businesses. Mm-hmm. And so it's more like businesses are going to start getting both political and politicized, right? Everyone saw Ben Shapiro with his board today outside of Home Depot. That's because Home Depot is a good company owned by conservatives who's down in Atlanta who didn't get involved in the Georgia voting rights bill. And so now conservatives can support Georgia. And so, I think that the company stuff, I think they're going to politicize it, but at the end of the day, everyone's going to have their companies that they go to, that they cozy up to, because they work with them on certain policy areas, right? There's going to be certain companies that really want to see infrastructure done. And there's going to be other ones that are going to be much more worried about their taxes going up to get it done. And so I just think you'll end up with different companies on different sides. I think the big tech thing, though, is a totally different sector altogether, where Republicans have decided to launch a war on big tech. And actually, I think that the Democrats don't love them that much either. And Hawley's position is just that they're too powerful. And it is weird to have the free marketers just all kind of roll along in this. But there's always been that populist strain that wants to go after companies that are too powerful. And, people like Josh Hawley don't want anybody to be more powerful than him. And so that's why he wants to break them up. It's not really an answer. I just think it's not as complicated as Republicans are giving up companies. Exactly. I will say, I think I think that the Democrats, especially the Joe Biden Democrats, should like grab a Tic Tac, move on them like a bee and grab them by the profit. Like,
Whoa.
Just grab them by the profit. Like Democrats should make their move. And this is an opportunity, I think, to make friends that they haven't had before. What?
That's all.
Yeah, that's making friends. A little something else.
But I shocked Charlie's delicate sensibilities.
Oh, no. I was so impressed by that was a deep dive in there, deep reference. I hope everybody got where you were going there.
Yeah, I heard the Tic Tac and then I thought about it, what it was, and then it was like, yep.
Okay, there you're there. Yeah.
This
I agree with the Senate. Yeah, they should.
This
But
stuff, all the
more
pieces
nicely.
something Charlie wrote this morning. This idea of writing laws to just hurt the people you don't like,
Yes.
which seems to be the entire Republican idea right now. And so, Charlie, you wrote about this morning the laws decriminalizing driving over protesters with your car.
It's interesting.
How does that even? And this is a very serious question. I think only one person on this podcast is a lawyer. Is that correct, Amanda?
No, you thought I was a lawyer?
I thought you went to law school. No.
Yes.
Wow.
No,
You have that lawyer vibe.
How does that how does a
I
law
want to be one.
saying that it's okay to commit vehicular manslaughter so long as it's a Black Lives Matter protester? Can you do that?
I would think
would
not.
courts recognize that as being legal?
Well, this is the other thing that obviously Republicans have really decided they're going to do, and it's all about narrative. What Amanda's talking about is like, let's have the populist narrative. Big companies bad. We're going to punish the woke companies. So the other narrative is that what's been happening in America is not peaceful protest. It is not. We should not have the focus on America's conscience being affected by the death of a Black man at the hands of a police. It's all about these rioters, the law and disorder. And so this kind of is a deep dive into, there's a long tradition of Republicans and conservatives wanting to be the law and order. We're tougher than you are on all of this. But what they're doing is that they're passing one law after another that criminalizes participation in protests. And the thing you're mentioning is just amazing, that you'd actually go so far as to write into law that if you use your car to mow down a protester, that you are going to not be held liable for that, which is really kind of amazing. Making things that used to be misdemeanors into felonies, and then saying that if you commit these particular crimes, you're going to be a complete pariah. You can't serve in public office, you can't get government loans, you can't do all of these things, which, considering that criminal activity is already criminalized. This is the kind of the key thing to remember. Throwing Molotov cocktails is already against the law. What they are doing is they're pushing this line up against peaceful protesters. And that's where I think they're going to get killed in the courts. But again, it's this impulse now that you have a conservative movement that is talking all the time about free speech and against cancel culture. And what are their two main priorities? Let's retaliate and cancel companies that engage in politically incorrect speech. And then let's pass dozens of laws that are aimed at the First Amendment right to peacefully gather. It's kind of an extraordinary moment for them, because that was what I wrote this morning, was really the GOP is attacking the First Amendment on two fronts. And they're this is where the id is right now. Restricting voting, attacking woke corporations, and trying to seize on this law and order. By the way, am I the only person that really thought that there are a lot of folks, on the right, the Fox News folks and certain other folks that are good friends, who were really deeply disappointed that there weren't riots this week? I just said they were crestfallen. There were people who had been gearing up. This is the week. We know who we're going to blame. We have our talking points. I could sort of see the Federalist front pages all mocked out and everything. They probably had all the assignments, about, who's going to handle the rioting here. And then nothing happens. So you can see it was a shitty week for Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro and the Molly Hemingways of the world.
One point I think is worth raising on the legislation being pushed to punish protesters. This is something that has been a sleeper issue in a lot of the Western states. When oil pipelines. There was a lot of oil pipeline fights in the West, and the energy companies pushed states to pass laws originally modeled to stopping the pipeline protesters from going on pipeline lands and grounds. And so there's actually kind of a precedent for this that DeSantis just picked up on. It's not something new that he came up with, and it's actually something I've been watching because the whole pipeline thing, like, I like pipelines, are good, they're probably safe and all the rest, but the way that these companies just come into rural areas sometimes and plow their way in, they can be really, really nasty. Denver Riggleman, that's originally why he ran for Congress in Virginia, because pipeline came and steamed through his town and caused a big fight. And anyway, that's some background information on that. That's just worth looking into if you like that subject.
Yeah, but of course it's, so the conservatives are super concerned about protecting energy companies and oil companies with pipelines. When it comes to like the Bundy ranchers, then it's all about, why is the government being so terrible to these freedom-loving patriots, right? This is, if I had a nickel for every time I've heard some conservative commentator say, well, he wouldn't have gotten killed if he had just done whatever the cop said to him right away without any hesitation. And yet, if the feds had just like opened fire on the Bundys,
the Capitol rioters. The Capitol rioters.
Yeah, the Capitol riot, right? Then anyway, but this protest stuff. I mean, this would, I think, right? If this law were passed in Virginia, pre-Charlottesville, this would decriminalize the murder of Heather Heyer. Right? Am I?
I actually don't. I mean, murder's murder. I mean, that's the thing. But now that you mention it, okay. So you have the Charlottesville and January 6th. You have these massive riots. None of these bills that are being considered now were inspired by either one of those events. Trust me. This is all about seizing on Black Lives Matter. You mentioned the
didn't
Bundy
Donald
thing.
Trump also have the executive order to punish anyone with 10 years in the clink if they defaced a federal building or monument?
Or remember, we have like 15 years in prison for pulling down a statue.
Yeah.
Because of course that's the most dangerous terroristic thing you could possibly do. The Bundy thing, now that you mention it, that was an early indication of sort of the weirdness when conservatives rallied around, these yahoos with their guns and everything, defying the government. I think that was an indication of how strange things were going to get, and I think we're continuing to see that. But in the world of cognitive dissonance, think about the reaction to the Bundys with their guns and their defiance of the cops versus the reaction to Black Lives Matter. And look, there's long histories here. I mean, you can't talk about this as something that just popped up in the last year. Cops, mobilizing cops when Black people march, across bridges in Selma. These are kind of iconic moments. And it's interesting, the modern Republican Party is looking at that, Bloody Sunday in Selma and going, we could use some of that. We know exactly how we'd spin that, right? That was pretty dark.
Yeah, tell them if they get arrested, they can't get a student loan.
Yeah, what is with
That's
that?
weird.
Yeah.
Well, you let the government take over student loans and look what they can do with it.
By the way, that's an excellent libertarian point to make that. Yeah.
If you pull a gun on Black Lives Matter protesters, though, the good news is you can run for Senate. So that
which candidate is that?
That's your reward. The McCloskey,
right.
The boy McCloskey is going to run. It's going to be a great race there in Missouri because it's going to be McCloskey v. Greitens, and so Greitens is the one with the sex dungeon.
With Kimberly Guilfoyle as his fundraiser.
Kimberly Guilfoyle is his fundraiser, who also was accused very strangely of sexual harassment of a female employee. So there's like a lot of
it's like somebody's script. If we were
what's going on in Missouri? Thought there was Josh Hawley. See?
Who are we rooting for in the Greitens v. McCloskey race?
So there's like a third person who's like a state. I can't remember who it is, but it's like it's a MAGA normie. Like
it would no such thing.
But I mean, compared to McCloskey, who, by the way, like got indicted for doing the gun. Like he's like that. He got in trouble for that because it was whatever he did. And then Greitens. Here's the thing about Greitens, because I went down the rabbit hole on him at some point. Not only did he tie this woman up, photograph her, blackmail her, horrible stuff. He also like scammed a veterans charity. Like he was already under indictment like before the whole thing happened. So this guy is like,
does he know Matt Gaetz?
Top shelf disgusting, had to resign. And now like it's like step up. I can just leverage this into a
no,
like,
I mean that's not an exaggeration. It is
no,
like
it's not.
well, of course, Hunter Biden. What about what I mean, no, it is as if all of these folks think that Donald Trump gave everyone a card, a sort of get out of jail, whatever you do, whatever age group, whatever you tie up your housekeeper, you traffic in young women. Hey, it is a new era, and if Donald Trump can get away with this stuff, you can get away with it. Matt Gaetz basically wrote that in his book. And I think that's sort of an internalization that none of the rules apply. So, Sarah, everything you just said is reported on the front page of every newspaper in St. Louis. What does Eric Greitens do? He will put out a fundraiser saying, see, the mainstream media is out to get me, and I will not be silenced. They will continue to peddle the lies, but I will fight back and I will fight for you. So it has changed all of the incentive structures that the more loathsome you are, that what would have been completely disqualifying a few years ago, they think they're okay. Now, I don't know whether they're right. Now, JVL, you always take the darkest view. I wonder whether we're missing this story, that all of these absolutely appalling human beings are running for Senate in one state after another. They may win their primaries, but there's also the possibility they're flipping winnable seats into unwinnable in one state after another. Ohio, Missouri,
yeah,
keep going.
that Missouri seat is winnable. I mean, Missouri is basically Alabama at this point.
Yeah,
it's like Alabama with one town in it.
Yeah, but if you think Greitens can win a general election at this point, really?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Greitens' whole fall from grace happened pre-Trump, I think, or just the very beginning.
No, it happened. It was like 2017, I think.
Right, so the very beginning of Trump world. And had he hung in there and this had been like 2019, it would have been like just one more thing. And for a lot of these guys, I really think this is true. The juice is the scandal, because the scandal is what look at how much all of the bad people hate me.
Yeah,
I must be on your side, right? And it is. You can try to convince the MAGA heads that you're on their side by passing policies or giving speeches or something, but nothing speaks as loud as having the libs hate you. And this is what Greitens has. It's what McCloskey has. This is why one of the reasons I think that the crazy Josh Mandel.
Yes.
Howard Mandel, Seth Mandel, one of the Mandel boys in Ohio.
Gosh.
I think he actually is turning himself into essentially the Laura Loomer of the Ohio Senate primary is pretty smart, because he's making himself look like the craziest son of a bitch that's on the ballot.
He wants to get kicked off of Twitter by being so outrageous that they could say, look, I was just kicked off of Twitter. I am the victim. And probably adds 20 points to his polling. Yeah. I don't know. So could I throw out a complete digression that I was thinking of though? Do you remember the piece that you wrote, JVL, that you wrote when everybody thought that the governor of Virginia, Northam, had to resign because of the blackface picture? Yes. And remember, there was that weekend and everybody just assumed he was going to resign. And you wrote an interesting contrarian piece saying he's not going to resign because, and let's game this out, there's no real upside for him resigning. He did not resign. You actually called that shot, but that's now become the model. Yes. that people have realized. Whatever you do, don't resign. Just hold your breath. So, for example, that we're not talking about Chris Cuomo today. And okay, Matt Gaetz has some problems, but Matt Gaetz, I'm not going anywhere. You just ride out a few news cycles and who knows what's going to happen. So that whole model has been changing. And I think the Northam case I mean, I'm guessing that in Andrew Cuomo's office, they brought up that Northam case over and over and over again. Hang in there. You can be redeemed in the way that he was. So nobody ever apologizes. Nobody's ever guilty. Nobody's ever over. And whatever you do, do not quit.
Yeah, I mean, literally the only thing that can get somebody out of office now is a criminal conviction.
Or if there's a picture of the bad thing. That's
Like
why
who?
Al Franken had to go. You got to have a picture or videotape.
But I think that's kind of the counterexample. Everybody's going, you don't want to do what Al Franken did. That was crazy.
But that's the only reason why he did. If there was no picture, he would still be there. I mean, I just keep going to any of these harassment stories. If it's not on picture or videotape, it doesn't matter. You have to have it in picture or videotape.
I also think that was like really at the height of the Me Too movement. Sorry, JVO, what?
Is it possible that Al Franken is just a better human being with a sense of shame?
No,
people are.
No, it was like the height of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
And Republican or Democrats wanted to be pure as the driven snow on the issue. They needed the moral high ground. And
somebody in chat room reminds us Katie Hill was driven.
Well, there was pictures.
Right.
There was a picture.
Yeah.
We all saw it.
So, well, not. I don't speak for yourself, Amanda.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
If you saw it, you would know why she resigned, because it was with a staffer.
Oh, the picture was with the staffer?
Yes.
Oh,
that's what the throuple was about. I mean, it wasn't.
I
it wasn't because of the throuple. It's because it was a staffer.
Yeah.
I think. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Anyway.
Can I just have I have a theory on this that is also my theory about why we can't hold on to our anger about the attack on the Capitol.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is, I just think, like, part of what's changed, even in the last 4 years, the acceleration, like, our social media addled brains cannot hold on. We cannot sustain outrage. We can sustain outrage as like a general matter, but not about a particular thing. Like, we need to feed something else. And so, because it is wild to me, I wrote this piece today about, we take democracy for granted. Everybody's just kind of moved on from the insurrection. No one's holding on to it. And like, a lot of the comments were like, it wasn't that big a deal. And like, why are you still making a big deal out of this?
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like trolls and stuff, but this is real. This is, and like the focus groups, you just see it, like the distance you get, and 3 months is all you need before people are like, what was that thing that Matt Gaetz even did? Like, why did Katie Hill resign? Like, we can't hold on to it. And people know that now, that something has changed about just think about the Monica Lewinsky scandal and the fact that like one sexual scandal was able to sustain like 2 years of news cycles. We got in 2 impeachments with Trump, and I'm not sure the first one anybody could like really summon like the particulars of it. Like, we just lost it.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, but I think that this is a failure of the media, because it is a compelling, interesting, important story that has a lot of day-to-day updates when it comes to all these insurrectionists getting arrested all across the country. If you look at the people who are following this and you read the court filings about what happened and what they said, I mean, this can be a sustainable story. It is meaty, it is interesting, it has real-time impact when it comes to congressional races and people who are in Congress now. I mean, there's so many layers to it. If somebody wanted to do it, for the life of me, I can't figure out why, people aren't doing hourly updates. So-and-so is arrested. This oath keeper pled guilty. All the elements are there to do it. Nobody wants to. I do not understand this.
So I don't know if you heard my podcast today, but I said, I actually woke up early this morning thinking about this exact same thing. How we have memory hold this, and it's been only 3 months. And this was such a massive event with so many consequences. A sitting president of the United States leading an attack on the Capitol, or inciting an attack on the Capitol to stop the counting of the vote. I mean, if somebody would have told you that this was going to happen in advance, it is amazing. And in history, it's going to loom, I think, very, very large. And then I opened up my phone to see what's on the Bulwark and saw your story. And it was, so just so you know, at least I was thinking exactly this thing, and also thinking about the way the Republicans, they did not let Benghazi die. Like, I mean, they
Yes.
just hammered this and hammered this and hammered this and hammered this for years. And yet it's been only 3 months. And, you know, and I don't know what the Democrats are, they're waiting on the 9/11 commission or anything. And they,
Is that
you
going
know,
to
I mean,
happen?
I don't know. Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen?
I don't think so.
If
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
happen, it's not
I don't understand how anybody, it's the problem is the problem with Democrats, my friends, is that they want to do the policy. And so like they're moving on, right? They're like, well, we got to do infrastructure and we got to do the COVID relief bill. And we got to get this stuff done. And that's driving the political news cycle. And so, and I guess
Where's this liberal media when you need them?
I just don't understand how somebody's not like JBO made this point. It's not, I don't know, in a newsletter. And it was like every interview with one of these Republicans, you know, the Q1 money comes out, right? The filings. People should be like, so did you, do you believe Joe Biden's the real president?
Yeah.
Like, do you believe the election was legitimate? Because they just got to call an election illegitimate, object to it, lie to people, Capitol's attacked, no peaceful transition of power. We're 3 months out and we're like, trans bathrooms, Mr. Potato Head. And I'm just like, I'm going insane. I like feel it's like the same crazy pills I felt like during the Trump era. It's just like, what are we talking about here?
We need a Republican accountability project.
Yes, somebody should do that.
Well, it was weird. I mean, so the Republicans moved to censure Maxine Waters for one thing she said, and I guess the obvious response was, as the Republican Accountability Project pointed out, hey, maybe maybe Republicans should have dealt with their own nut jobs for, you know, first, you know, the Lauren Bobbitts and, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greenes and everything. But then I was thinking, well, they never did anything. I mean, the Democrats never did anything about the Sedition Caucus. Absolutely nothing. They didn't even have a show vote on any of that, not to mention not having the 9/11 commission. Now, I'm going to be misunderstood about this, and we're going to get a lot of blowback, because I've really come around to thinking that, you know, DC statehood is the right thing to do. It is a legitimate thing to do. Yes, it's a power play, but this is the way politics is played. It, you know, is 700,000 people, more people than several of our states, and yet all of the energy they're putting into that, knowing that there's zero chance that is ever going to happen. So at a certain point, if you're going to not do this sort of thing, could you at least focus on the substantive? I mean, I know it's substantive. I mean, things that will actually happen in reality, in the real world. But this is one of them. And the way in which not only has the story of January 6th been retconned, but given Trump's behavior, you would think that he'd pay some price every single time someone goes down to Mar-a-Lago and kisses his ass. Every single time. That ought to be a huge thing. And yet you have the Kevin McCarthy's and others who go down there. That story about Rick Scott giving him an award. What was the award, you know, for, you know, conservative of the century or something like that?
The Bowl for Tears.
Yeah, I mean, the very day that he is attacking Murkowski and saying these things, it's like, you know, and where are some of our friends? Where are the good Republicans? I mean, with the exception of Liz Cheney. You know, Liz Cheney is about, okay, and Adam Kinzinger says stuff, but Liz Cheney is about the only one who's like, you know what? I'm still saying, you know, we should have nothing to do with him. He should have no role in the party, and it's ridiculous to talk about 2024. But beyond that, where is everybody? What is the deal?
Hold on. I think this is a serious question. Why is Trump being so quiet? Actually, to me is actually amazing. He's staying stationed in Mar-a-Lago and trying, like, he's being very quiet. He's not traveling. People are coming to him. You know, a little bit of information comes out. That's really it. There's fundraisers. I never expected he would be sheltering in place the way that he is. And I wonder what you guys make of that.
I think he's waiting for the midterms. Yeah.
Really? He's actually being disciplined? Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably a little bit afraid that if he goes out and like does a rally somewhere, he'd only get like 6,000 people or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Once he can graft himself onto another campaign and feel like it's, you know, we're fighting for you. Yeah, I think then, you know, you can get back to having a big arena, and, you know, everything can be come join. He was going to make a big announcement in front of everybody at the whatever Cow Palace Theater. So
I don't
think
know.
But Amanda's point is interesting because here's a guy whose entire career is based on being, having attention paid all the time,
I think he's
always
damaged
driving the
from
news
losing.
cycle. Well, I think that's plausible that he's damaged from losing because he is diminished even by in Donald Trump's world. If you're not in the news, you're not relevant. He hates that, right? And he's not in the news, and he is becoming less. I mean, yes, the politicians are still kissing his ring and all of that stuff, and maybe that's what's important to him right now. But he is receding. It does feel. It feels quieter and more rational.
Can I just rewind real quick, Charlie? So you said that DC statehood is not going to happen.
Oh no.
Are you 100% sure of that? I ask this seriously. I feel like the DC statehood is one of those things where if the Democrats don't do whatever is required to do it, then they have committed malpractice.
Oh, well, we're talking about Democrats.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Democrats. I mean, so how do they do this? How do they do statehood with reconciliation? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't.
I just don't know.
Against it, right? I mean, it's really just Manchin, right? And I don't know.
Count. You got to count to 50. But yeah. I mean, it's look. It's that's an aggressive move. And if they had 54, 55 votes, I think yeah, absolutely they would do it. But look at these votes. I mean, they're getting all of this stuff. They have 218 votes in the House of Representatives. I mean, that is like this is like a hair. One guy swallows a chicken bone, and they lose control of the House. One guy.
Yeah.
You
still need 2/3 vote for statehood. Filibuster doesn't solve that problem.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
I just triple checked.
Are you
Really?
sure?
Yeah, it's a constitutional amendment.
Really?
I don't believe that's right.
Okay. Well,
I could
we
be wrong.
will
I'm
fact
not a
check
lawyer.
that.
I didn't even
I
say
will-
Holiday Inn Express.
I play one on Zoom.
But I believe that is a straight up law that you can pass, and so you would need to kill the filibuster and then do it.
Yeah, you need to kill the filibuster first because you need to get to 60.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So kill the filibuster. This is.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't know how many op-eds Joe Manchin has to write. It's like I just keep talking to people who are like, well, you got to get Manchin to kill the filibuster, like to do any of these things. Like,
Yeah.
he just, I don't know. The guy has been like pretty crystal clear. He's not going to do it.
Isn't that just how you drive your price up? If you're Joe Manchin, like you keep saying, no, I'm not going to do it. And you're just driving up the price of what you have to be paid off to do it.
So actually, here's the thing is I'm actually, I am not of the belief
Give dentures to everybody in West Virginia.
Wait, what?
What'd you say?
The federal government will give dentures to everyone in West Virginia.
That
That's
is so
not-
cool. We just want broadband internet. Okay, that'd be fine.
Amanda says that she like drives her like horse and buggy to a different location to grab some internet at a coffee shop.
I trust.
Watching us. Yeah, here's the
You
thing.
may want to know what building I'm in.
I think that Joe Manchin would potentially do a weakened filibuster, right? That he would, or filibuster reform at some point in which you do the talking filibuster and you lower the threshold. Like there's ways to reform it, but he's not going to do that for DC statehood, right? And he's also not going to do it until it's something that has bipartisan support. Like what I think he's been super clear about is that for him to, if it would be one thing, I don't know, somebody just said this, if you could get to 53, 54, 55, and Murkowski, Romney, Collins, there was like enough on it. And he was like, well, I just can't get to 10, but this is bipartisan. Like, then I think he might might do the reform, but like no one's going to blow it up for statehood.
Speaking of distractions, JVL, you had a piece that was, I think I was on vacation when you wrote in the triad about something else that the Democrats are doing, which I think is political malpractice, which is raising the issue of court packing when they have no intention of actually doing it. What did you say? That court packing is court packing is the new defund police. And so what they do is they kind of throw it out there. They're not going to actually do it, but it's out there enough that it can motivate Republicans. Every Republican in America is going to run on that during the midterms, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, Sarah, you take a different view of this. You don't think it's a big deal. I understand it's not the leadership, right? It's, it's like three Democrats, but they're not like, backbenchers. They're, serious people. It's Ed Markey in Massachusetts, and
They need to bounce Breyer.
Yeah,
Fill that seat. You morons.
I just didn't understand who was helped by pushing that bill forward so that it could go nowhere. It isn't as if, look, I mean, Biden has started his commission, which is going to study the Supreme Court and maybe come up with interesting recommendations, maybe not. But it's not like that issue just disappeared, right? It's, it's a live issue. And a week after that, these guys jump out in front of it and kneecap the Biden administration and I mean, what do you think Abigail Spanberger thought about this? If you're Nancy Pelosi trying to protect your caucus with your, 213 votes or whatever it is, Charlie, to have a member of your caucus go and just hang an albatross around vulnerable members like that is just, it makes me want to set myself on fire.
Why do you think I would take a different view of this? Because other than I think like it's not a thing, like it's not going anywhere, but precisely because it's not going anywhere is the reason it's sort of political malpractice.
Yeah,
now
right.
they have to pay the rhetorical price for a thing that's never going to happen.
Right.
Which is just like the kind of thing. And you're right that it's Markey, and it's also what's his name who led the first impeachment.
Schiff?
Nadler.
Oh, Nadler. Oh, really?
And it's like this. So I don't know what these guys are thinking. And Pelosi had to come out and stop on it.
Yeah. I kind of feel like America needs the Democrats to be better, like at politics.
That's what we're here for.
Dear Democratic Party, could you please get better at politics pretty fast? Because we have this authoritarian party over here that wants to make it okay to drive over protesters, and we would like to stop them. So
they've kind of
just get better at politics, please.
But they've kind of convinced themselves that they don't need to reach out to, I mean, there are, believe it or not, there are Republicans, I think, in elective office who would kind of like to work with them on some of this stuff. And my sense is that they're going, yeah, we don't need to, because we have 216 votes in the House and we have a majority of pretty much nothing in the Senate, that's enough for us.
But the good news is, Charlie, is that I saw you tweeted earlier that the Congressional Black Caucus wants a slimmed down version of HR1 that might have a better chance of passing.
It's almost like
about that.
Yeah, Black Americans literally save the Democratic Party every single time.
Yeah, true.
It's like I read that piece in Politico today, and I was like, thank God somebody is talking about this. Because there's actually another bill that's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is good.
This was my point. It's like, guys, you have a bill. It's called the John Lewis Bill. It restores the Voting Rights Act that has been passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities in the past. Look, I don't know what Republicans are going to do. Maybe they'll vote against anything, but this is a much tougher thing to vote against, the John Lewis Bill. And I know I've become a broken record on this, that when the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, overwhelming bipartisan majority. Everett Dirksen, the Republican leader, was a co-sponsor. When it was reauthorized, it was, I think, passed the Senate unanimously. George W. Bush, Republican president, signed it. So John Lewis is a revered symbol of voting rights. And this thing is pretty clean. It's pretty simple. It's the obvious fallback position if you get tangled up, as opposed to the 890,000 pages of HR1. But yeah, the Congressional Black Caucus finally doing the pragmatic thing, saying, hey, you're not going to get everything.
So
let's go for this.
Do you think the Dems should blow up the filibuster for it then? I mean, let's
yes.
say
yes.
they got 53 votes in the Senate.
See,
Or
now this is
51 votes.
this is the other one, is that if there's one thing they might blow up the filibuster for,
Yeah.
it's if the Republicans want to block the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's as bright a line as you could possibly get. And so I think, look, I agree that Joe Manchin is pretty much locked in, but I do think that there's a separate thing about, blowing up the filibuster in the abstract with like, why should he be in favor of that? But there might come a moment where you need to make a tweak. So is Joe Manchin going to say, okay, I'm still not going to blow up the filibuster, except when it comes to certain kinds of voting rights acts that are passed, in a full moon. These guys can do that, right? I mean, they can figure out how to do a carve out, and this would be the perfect carve out for it.
Sarah, would you favor that as our resident institutionalist?
So, look, here's the thing. I do not favor blowing up the filibuster. I think reforming it to some degree so that you've got these thresholds you have to meet. That's possible. But here's the thing: the strategy on the voting rights bill to me is pretty clear, which is I hear a lot of the Democrats being like, "You're never going to get to 10. So like the only thing we've got here is to blow up the filibuster." And I'm like, but the thing is, you do need 3 or 4 Republicans, because that's where Manchin gets his cover to do, whether it's a carve out, whether it's a reform piece. He's going to have that. He needs and so you've got to do a couple of things. One, you've got to get together with a popular bill. Like nobody likes, I don't think Democrats like it when like never Trumpers offer this kind of advice, but like there's a whole bunch of stuff in HR 1 that like you just know no one's ever going to go for. So why don't we dispense with the kabuki theater, focus on a bill that you can message hard. I mean, make Republicans take a vote against a bill with John Lewis's name on it. Just focus on the voting rights portion, and also bring Murkowski and Collins and Romney to the table very early. Right? Convene them, make them part of the process. Don't come in with some big bill and be like, this is about voting rights and that's an existential threat, so vote for this. Work with them up front, figure out what can you do some give and take on. And so then you get your 3 or 4 Republicans. That's how you get Manchin to do this big move. And it's good. It's got to be done like that.
And the same thing on infrastructure. Because I think you can do that. You can do something similar on that with infrastructure. Look, I know the Republican offer was like 1/4 of what Biden wants to do, but it's a negotiation. And I looked at it, and I thought, okay, this looks like an offer on the table. You split the difference between $2 trillion and $500 to $600 million. Is that a huge loss? Is that a terrible thing? If you got 4, 5, 6 Republicans to vote for it in the Senate? I don't know. I mean, I think Democrats are sort of locked into thinking they think they can get it all, and so they're going to go for the full $2 trillion. But I didn't think the Republican bill looked stupid to me.
So they'd be silly not to negotiate. They were talking about breaking up the infrastructure bill anyhow, so they should just take as much as they can get from Republicans and then strip the other stuff out and vote on it later. That's what I think.
I have a real question about the politics of that. Is it better to get like 3 Republican votes on a bill that is half of what you want? Or is it better to just get all of what you want pure? I'm not talking about like
that's the question.
That, but purely as a political matter. If what you are concerned about is defending the House and Senate, which of those pathways helps you do that more in 2022?
So let me make my pitch for why I think getting 3 Republicans is better politics. Right. I think that one of the narratives I've been talking to a lot of reporters are starting to write there, Joe Biden, 100 days. What does it look like? And I think that one of the narratives that I think, there kind of is this idea where like Republicans can't define Joe Biden. But I actually think one of the big things they're defining him on is a hypocrite who preached unity and isn't doing it and is refusing to work with Republicans. And I think at some point, I think Joe Biden's actually pretty desperate to negotiate on the infrastructure bill, because I think they want to have something to say, we worked with Republicans on, we did this in good faith, we didn't ram it through reconciliation, where they can either get a couple Republicans or they can make such a show of trying that if they don't get them, they're like, we tried really hard.
Yeah, I guess, again, they're different political goods, right? I mean, the one political good is being able to run on the idea of, look, see, we did unity. The other political good is being able to have money spread around in districts and in states in ways that Democrats who are running for office, running to hold their seats, can say, look at what I delivered for you. And so that's, again,
$500 billion is still a lot of money, though.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
half
you,
of what
you,
he's
you
asking
can
is
go
a trillion.
shopping with that.
See, I'll tell you what I'm starting to worry about is that what Sarah had to say about the, being blamed for saying you're going to be a unifier, but not. I think it's slightly different than that. I would agree, but if they push this through $2 trillion on the narrowest of margins, that creates an incentive for that midterm voter to go, I have to put a check on these guys because they've clearly signaled that they're just going to go for it all. That they're going to spend money like crazy. They're going to push all sorts of things. They're not going to compromise. Yep. The hopes for a sort of centrist coalition seem to be shrinking at the moment. And I know there's all this talk about, the Biden Republican. There are no Biden Republicans in Washington right now. So I do wonder, I'm thinking about your voters in Abigail Spanberger's district going, hey, we love you, Abigail, but we need to check on this because this is, they basically signaled that they're going to go pedal to the metal on all of this stuff. Whereas if there's a compromise and they get, say $1.2 trillion, that's a deliverable. That's a lot of money. And it is huge. And it's on top of, are you doing a running tally, Amanda, how much money we've spent in the last year?
Oh, it's like over 5. I mean, well, yeah.
5, 6, 7, and then there's another package coming. I mean, it's not like there's not going to be deliverables here. At a certain point, you deliver this massive spending package, and then you sell it and try not to have people scared out of their wits that you're going to do all this stuff, that you're going to pack the courts and you're going to abolish the police and you're going to, and yeah.
I mean, look, just to loop it up to where we started.
Yeah.
We woke up today with Sarah's fantastic piece about how 12 weeks after the insurrection at the Capitol, like the whole country is kind of already gone, trusting the American voters to, in 2022, late November, early November 2022, to say, yeah, I'm going to stick with Abigail Spanberger because they got 3 Republican senators on that bill they did a year ago. I just don't know that I trust that to be a political winner. And, whereas
when you put it that way,
flowing through the pipeline and people can, God knows after this last election, I do not understand how voters think. I don't understand anything about them.
They tell you all the time. They tell you all the time.
And it's depressing.
But if they just can look into, like pull out their back pocket and be like, yeah, I guess I got some money in here, and I still have a job. Maybe that will be enough to convince them to vote for Spanberger. And so if the government spending money helps with that, I think I'm on the other side of that. I just don't, again, as a political, maybe the bill is better. Maybe it's a better bill that you get with Republican input. And so I'm open to that argument. But the idea that the politics of, look, we got 3 Republican votes is going to help Biden and the Dems, I just don't know.
Yeah, but it's both. It's both, right? If you get 3 Republican votes and you've passed a bill, right? That is better because you've now passed a bill and you've eliminated the talking point that he never reached out to Republicans, he never worked with Republicans.
Yeah, Joe Biden has to be very conscientious of the hit that's coming in 2024 is that he is a Trojan horse for the AOC, Kamala Harris left, and he never reached out to Republicans. It's all a sham.
But that's going to be what happens.
Yeah, but if he can mitigate that, if you have a couple bullet points somewhere along the way in the next 4 years, he needs to have some evidence that he actually did the centrist thing. Maybe it's this bill, maybe it's something else. But he's got to come up with something.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not totally convinced, but that's okay. We'll do another one of these in a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get out of here, can we go back to Chauvin really quick? Because we really didn't talk about Chauvin at all, but we did. Charlie was talking about how disappointed people were that there weren't riots, how Republicans were. I think it is so strange the the way that the talking point, we talked about this on the next level, but I just want to throw it in here for people, because obviously that was the big thing that happened this week, that like somehow it wasn't just that they were disappointed, that they basically, the way that they got their juice out of that was to say that the conviction was based on the threat of the riots. And I would just like to just point out how disrespectful that is to the jury and to an American public that has eyes and that watched that video, and that whole pathetic, because I have to have a take on this, but I have to be anti-Chauvin because I can't be pro George Floyd, is absurd. And I'm just gonna smile. It's my last remark.
All right, guys. See you next week.
Thanks for being here.